once again the importance of making distinctions comes up. Distinctions in the sense that Fernando Flores, the philosopher and finance minister of Chile, was always making efforts to encourage us to distinguish. So he would say, all right, if Fernando Flores were exposed to the NLP paradigm and NLP language, he was aware of it, he would say distinguish between drilling down and merely chunking down. So if you work for the Microsoft Corporation, you will hear the term to fine grain it or drill down quite a bit. And drilling down, to my mind, appears to be a process which is like chunking down. It's like getting into a very fine-grained understanding of the subject. But it's more than simply chunking down. So if you just chunk down, if you just went down into your subject by going into all the little tiny component pieces of the mosaic, the little specifics that made it up, you're getting part of the drill down, but you're missing the full spirit or the full impact of the drill down. The drill down, again, to my mind, involves utilizing all of the tools. A great deal of the sleight of mouth map, the Diltzian map, can be used in a fine-grained way, in going into the granularity of a subject without being trapped in only talking about tiny little scholastic specifics that make up the picture. Sort of like, okay, we can see this picture as an exercise in pointillism, just little tiny dots that make the whole thing up. Or we could use also questions of chunking up as we drill down. What is this an example of? We could constantly be asking ourselves, what is this an example of? I've presented lots and lots of small data points, but what are those examples of? And what do those cohere into? We can also ask, what are the complex equivalents that exist in that or are suggested by that? What are the meanings that emerge from that pattern of fine points? We could be asking what sort of metaphors and metaphorical structures are implied or suggested or arise from those kind of points. What kind of metaphors properly describe the process of the drilling down and where that's taking us? What sorts of models of the world and what sorts of reality strategies have we used to get to that drilled down fine-grained place? And what do those fine grains of understanding suggest to us as far as realities and models of the world? And even at the meta-belief level of understanding, how does this relate to our larger process of arriving at beliefs and imposing beliefs and being guided and shaped by those beliefs at a very high logical level, even though we might be working at a very direct logical level? From the Cartesian standpoint, we could be asking very, very interesting inspired by the Cartesian concept questions. Whether or not René Descartes has any proper place in this discussion is probably not highly relevant, other than the fact that he did suggest a grid which used real numbers and imaginary numbers as a way of solving problems that were otherwise very, very cumbersome in analytic geometry. So we could say from a Cartesian standpoint, if we're drilling down, we could ask, what are some Cartesian type or Cartesian flavored questions we ask as we're drilling down? Those questions might include such things as, what possible worlds does this line of inquiry nurture? What possible worlds does this line of inquiry not nurture? What impossible worlds does this line of inquiry nurture? What impossible worlds does this line of inquiry not nurture? And impossible worlds, I'm not sure, are really non-existent worlds. Science fiction, or what was considered science fiction, has suggested worlds, some that seemed very improbable or very impossible, and yet did finally flower into reality, and others, there's some science fiction that just never went past its original premises, because, say, it was so locked into a certain view of that day and age. So some science fiction written in the 50s is just ludicrous, and you will never see flying V8 engine cars with big wings on them. But other things that may have been considered inconceivable to the what we would think of as the reality-based mind might have really been fine assessments of where things might have gone. So we should always ask, and I think if you look at any kind of debate or discussion, one of the ways you can evaluate the quality of that debate and the necessity of that debate is the quality and the depth and the illuminating power of the questions that are asked by the participants in the debate. There are some, you might say in a Cartesian way, in what ways are these questions empowering? In what ways are these questions disempowering? In what inconceivable ways? In what unbelievable ways are these questions empowering? In what unbelievable ways are these questions disempowering? So, if you said the intent or the purpose or the potentiality, which is, to me, a somewhat subtler and more valuable way to ask about intent. You say, what is the intent? Again, I've opened that question up quite a bit, and I've personally found that very, very liberating to go through those different models of intention and intending. But if you think about it in another language, if we switch our little markers for where we are in those sort of central zones of purpose, linguistic purpose and intellectual purpose, we could say, well, what potentialities does this suggest? What potentialities did this arise from? What were the initiating potentialities? What are the boundary conditions that shape those potentialities as they move from absences into presences, when they move from potentials into realities, and then they once again fade as presences back into absences as they're replaced by something else. So you can think about all that, process that stuff, use it or lose it. That's a good one. Use it or lose it. Great way to think about it.